Welcome back to Ivanti Security Insights, where best practice cybersecurity meets real-world workplaces and roadblocks. I'm your host, Ashley Stryker, and with us today is the lovely and charming Deputy CISO, Amanda Witter. Amanda,
Hello.
Hi, and welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's just going to be you and I on today's episode.
You know, we've got the really important people here.
We do, and I think this does give us a lovely opportunity to dive into some of the conversation we kind of started and then had to drop with one of our previous episodes, where we're talking about hiring in InfoSec and cybersecurity and how your own journey kind of made its way there. And we touched on briefly and promised to bookmark talking about the woman experience in cybersecurity. And you know what? I guess today that it might be a pretty good day to start that off, don't you think?
I remember that part of our conversation. I think I made the comment that as part of my journey into information security, I would not ask questions, scribble down notes in some of my meetings because I felt as a woman it might come across poorly to ask questions. I believe that was the starting point.
That was. So let's start there then. At what point did you just decide to say, screw it, I belong here. I'm going to not only take notes, but also participate? Was there a moment or a...
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm excited to start telling that story. I think that, as we're talking about this, I want to point out that, some of these struggles that I went through are struggles that a lot of people go through, not just women, but, unrepresented people in the workplace. And really, I hope that while we have come in as the all-important people as women, but certainly I want to have a message out to really everyone, including the men, that this conversation is for everyone. Because I don't believe I've ever come in contact with anyone in my professional career that has purposefully treated me poorly. So, yeah. So, honestly, I think the moment that we're talking about here, where I realized that I could be respected, or rather, I would be respected as a woman, despite my reservations of appearing as a stereotype. So I can back it up a little bit, right? Women in tech, originally I worked in the finance industry, like fintech startups and that kind of thing. So there's always a lot of pressure in being part of those industries, or any industry where that's the case, to be as successful, right? Have the same amount of respect, contribute as much, make a statement or a place for yourself. And as a woman, that pressure is always on. It might be self-inflicted, right? And I guess that's really where the journey is. So I had this mentality through my academic career, through my professional career. It was always gotta look smart. I've got to look capable. I've got to keep a cool head about things, right? And then there was this situation, the aha moment, right? I'm sitting in this room, myself, running this consulting project, and it was myself and 11 men, very intelligent, knowledgeable, competent professionals. And they were talking about something that I did not understand, but I needed to. And at some point I realized, we're all very passionate about what we do. And we enjoy telling people about our passions, whether it's work or your hobbies, right? And so in my mind, I'm like, I bet this person would actually like to tell me this stuff. So I asked. I was like, roll this back a little bit. I actually don't know what that is. So help me with that. And it's like the entire room became animated, right? It was no longer like the consultant, the auditor, grilling questions. It was, wow, somebody wants to know this. And after we had spent 2 days, so 10 hours in this room together, one of them reached back out to me a few days later and said, you know what? We have never had someone come in and show true interest in what we were doing. And it hit me that actually I earned more respect. I was more a part of the conversation. I had a bigger impact by just asking the question, why was I so hesitant for years?
Well, yeah. And that was about to be my next question to you was, do you think that was a you thing, or do you think that was a representative of similar issues from other women in those kind of situations?
I do not think that my situation, my experiences are unique. This is I mentioned the word stereotype, right? It really is a stereotypical view that women kind of impose on themselves, right? We do feel, like I had mentioned, this extra pressure that can come from all kinds of places, right? There's certainly parts of the evolution of our society, right? The sort of entrenched kind of mental frameworks that we have progressed so rapidly from, right? 20, 30, 50 years ago, the transition, it's rapid, right? So society has had very little time to very impressively make these huge strides, right, and towards equality and inclusiveness. So I'm sure, some of it is sort of that mentality. I don't know if you've gone back and seen some of the cartoons from our childhood, but let me just tell you, sometimes it's a little jaw-dropping that even, that many years ago, there was sort of this entrenched view of this, stereotypical relationship between men and women. So, maybe that's part of it. Another part of it is that women, for a reason that someone smarter than me would have to explain, are very hesitant to be wrong. That's a pretty common characteristic across women. Men seem more likely to say something that they're not sure of and then own when they get it wrong than a woman is, who would rather, and again, we're talking in generalization, right? But women who prefer to take in all of the information and then make a decision. So our need to digest everything before contributing, before saying something, means that we are unsure of ourselves, right? Until we feel comfortable with knowing everything, we have that. Parts of it is communication too. At least for me personally, I was aware that I could say things that were disadvantageous to my position. And so I'm always cautious about that, right? So these are common themes that women face in the workplace. So I would absolutely say, and underrepresented people, right? This spans sort of a wide variety of common characteristics that we really got to figure out the way around.
Right. And I was thinking through some of my own personal experiences in that. And I too have seen people's eyes light up when you just ask them and you're willing to be the student for a moment instead of constantly having to prove, yes, I belong here. Yes, I know what I'm doing. And if you just go to people and say, yes, can you tell me more about this thing that you clearly find so interesting? You're willing to spend your career doing it. And it's amazing the doors that open when you do take that initiative and kind of own that. And it's really remarkable. But I'm wondering more too, this is my first time working at a large tech company in general. We serve cybersecurity in IT operations and those kind of traditionally male-dominated kind of end users. As somebody who has seen both sides of the coin within a within a traditional male-dominated sector outside of tech, and then one that's in tech. Have you noticed that there are any differences in stereotypes of women that either hold especially true or are different, a different subconscious way of approaching things for women in technology, particularly in cyber and IT, than is in other industries?
I think that the mentality of women remains consistent regardless of the industry. We have certain characteristics and tendencies. We carry those with us. We're challenging ourselves to overcome them, no matter where we're at. However, there was a difference in the mentality of the opposite sex. And again, I'd like to reiterate, I think people are good. I don't think that I was intentionally slighted in any way. But when you have, for example, the financial industry, it is very established. There is not always a push for change, new, improved, cutting edge, that kind of thing. And when you have those types of institutions in place, there are traditions that have been passed forward from times where we maybe were not as progressive. So, for example, a board of a bank has traditionally been white, male, between a certain age, right? And you have to make active steps. You have to put in effort to break out of that mold, right? So the financial industry has more of a challenge with that than the technology industry. So when you're in technology, it's the next best thing, right? It's new, it's exciting, there's change. You have to be open to adapt to every scenario that comes up, right? And I found that sort of mentality, that forward thinking, seems to foster an environment where it doesn't matter your background, right? Do you have the idea? Do you have the capability? Are you excited? Are you enthusiastic? Are you curious? It doesn't matter who has that idea. Everyone can, because technology is so new, right? And some of the things that we're pushing into space and all of the stuff, because of that, there aren't those entrenched traditional structures of people, and that I feel gives more opportunity.
I have noticed that there is a willingness to experiment, to try new things, to try different approaches that has been lacking in other industries that are much more traditional. I worked in legal for a time, and introducing new concepts and new ways of doing things was more challenging than I had expected. To be tactful there for a moment. But that's really encouraging to hear, though, that kind of creates this open opportunity for women to really break through into this truly developing and cutting edge industry. So what do you think? Let's start with ourselves then. How do we as women or as previously disenfranchised groups attempting to break into an industry as powerful as technology, even as it is accepting, what can we do to better facilitate and find the places where we can grow, and then advocate for ourselves, and then find the advocates for who can help us?
Yes, that is a really good question. And I have been involved in women's initiatives in the past. I'm still actively an advocate. So I'll share some of the things that I've been taught and that have really been insightful, and then some of the things that I've learned. So communication is a huge factor in how we are able to present ourselves to other people. And there are big differences in how men and women communicate. For example, a when a male receives a compliment or like recognition, right? Hey, you did a good job. They accept it. Oh, thank you, right? That I appreciate that, right? When a woman is given the same kind of recognition, we will have a tendency to say, thank you, I had an excellent team, and transition the focus from themselves. Now, there is no right way there. In fact, they're both completely acceptable ways of responding. We need to be aware, however, that they are perceived differently. I'll keep giving you a couple of examples, but I do want to pause for just a moment. I do not have the answer on who is responsible in that scenario for recognizing that those are both equal responses. So in that scenario, the woman is no longer the focus and thus elicits less respect than the man who, owns it, right? Claims that, right? So from the, giver, communicator of the recognition, the compliment, if they are male, it is often perceived that the woman was, earned less respect, right? Was a weaker response. How's that? We would consider that a weaker response. And so it can be perceived differently, right? So the reason I want to pause is because I don't know who in that scenario is ultimately the responsible party for making that exchange more equal. Is it the woman who should say it in such a way as the man did, because we realize that that's what makes us, that's how we get equal footing? Or is it the giver of the recognition who realizes that what the woman said was not an indicator of
it's not
weakness,
a weak response,
right?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that answer. All right. So let me give you a couple more examples. And let me just tell you that I cannot speak to who would be the person to make the change, to make the shift.
And that was part of why I framed the question to you the way I did, was because I recognize while there are some things that we ourselves can do to take ownership, there are other things outside of our control in the environment that we are in the workplace that we're in the industry that we're in, that they have to shift as well. So it's kind of a meeting halfway. So just with that general recognition of what can everybody do here?
And then I apologize for leaping forward there. It's just such an important thing to express, so that when you and I are talking, I would never want to say that this perception or this conversation is men are bad. Men should be doing this differently, right? I also want to make the point that it is that women are not in any way bad for doing these things. That response is perfectly acceptable by the woman, right? This is exactly what you're talking about. It's a communication, like it's a collaborative effort, right? So, like I said, I apologize for jumping forward, but I really want to make sure that this conversation with us fosters a positive environment, right? Yeah. So, thank you. A constructive environment. Yep, absolutely. So another example I sort of brought up where we are not confident in being wrong. We're not comfortable with being wrong. That's a hard one. When you
We're
take
back
the
to,
risk,
is this a woman thing or is this a me thing? Because I personally am not comfortable being wrong. But if I'm starting to think about it, it's not so much a discomfort of being wrong, so much as it is a reluctance to speak until you're sure. And oftentimes men are more comfortable giving answers and responses when they're not as certain of an answer. Women tend to be wait and tend to wait until they have more of the information before being certain of the answer. So it has been my experience that in those kind of situations, because a woman needs more time, the woman in question needs more time to respond with confidence. In the meantime, the team runs with the initial response from the one, so that by the time the other woman participant is ready to contribute and is like, no, guys, this is actually the correct response, they've already haired off halfway through because the man was willing to put forward his idea first. And that has been, again, this is grossly generalized, but that has been a ongoing and recurring theme in my own professional career. That was what I was thinking of when you brought up that situation.
Well, let me make a comment on that before I give you maybe one final example. There's actually two parts to what you're talking about, and they both contribute. There is a hesitation to be wrong. There's a hesitation to be wrong. That is separate from a woman's tendency to be less vocal. That doesn't mean that they don't
I see what you're saying.
come into play at the same time, but an example of being wrong and a woman being afraid to being wrong is, does that make sense? Right? At the end of what we say.
I say that all the time.
Is that, oh, did I communicate that? Did I say something wrong? Does that make sense? Right? That's what I'm talking about, where an example of where women don't want to be wrong, right? We were uncomfortable with it. Whereas you're also absolutely right. We prefer to, we typically like to absorb all of the information and speak when there is an appropriate time to not cut people off, those types of things that contribute. So there's two parts there. But let me give you one last example, and this is from personal experience. Women can be self-deprecating and sometimes not even realize that they're doing it.
You and I have talked about this, in fact. Yes, we can.
It is, our conversation was actually pretty funny because we both done it in different ways, right? You have made active comments, and I'll let you share those, versus me, who was unaware I was doing the exact same thing, right? So in my particular case, I would say our CISO, Daniel, that he's the more technical one versus me, which is more risk compliance. That is perpetuating a stereotype that is absolutely untrue. It framed him as the man and the more technical versus me, the woman who has more soft skills. It's absolutely not that way, right? My technical expertise is in fintech and blockchain and digital assets, right? His expertise is networking, infrastructure, more InfoSec oriented kind of thing. So while I was good intentioned with what I was saying, trying to express how he and I complement each other, I was reinforcing a stereotype without even realizing it. There was like self-deprecation there completely unintentionally, but when you brought it up in our conversation, it was a jaw-dropping moment. It was an aha moment that even after all of these efforts that I've been making over the years for that equality, I was still have things to learn.
And it was a beautiful moment too of a perfect example, I think, actually, of acknowledging that these things run deep and it's often not intentional. I did not intend by any means to belittle my deputy CISO. That was oh, holy crap, you're absolutely correct. I am so, there was lots of apologies. And Amanda, you were like, no, it's fine. I can completely see how you got there. And that was an interesting conversation that you and I both had to kind of unpack how we got to that point. And then it was kind of the genesis of several of our conversations on how do you accommodate and account for these sorts of things within a modern environment, even with the best of intentions. So that was, I thought that was why I was snorting earlier, because that was a perfect example. And then I actually have a habit of self-deprecating humor. I tend to put people, that's my default for putting people at ease, because nobody can get mad if I'm the one who's getting the joke made of them, right? And so it's something that's cross-cultural, that nobody can possibly feel offended if it's me who's the butt of the joke, first of all. Second of all, it makes people feel more comfortable and less intimidated. Because, if I can admit to fault, if I can admit to wrong, then that means that they're also comfortable shouldering blame in certain situations where it may be appropriate for them to do so. Or, it's a great icebreaker too, because it makes people realize that, I'm not going to be that, auditor at the table kind of moment. It's going to be hey, we're all in this together. We're all partners in this. Let's just, go to town and break the ice that way. But in recent months, my boss and I have been discussing this. And while I'm in marketing, I'm not directly in cybersecurity. It's to Amanda, to your point earlier, it's a woman issue, we suspect. We worry that people who don't know me already, so internal executives and hires up and the powers that be, as I so lovingly refer to them as, might not understand that this is my not defense mechanism, but it's just a quirk. And I'm just as capable and competent and confident as someone who doesn't do that. And I know exactly what I'm talking about in my arena and what to do and where to go. But the self-deprecation is an accommodating mechanism. And we worry that I could be taken less seriously. My proposals could be subject to flaws. Am I trying to mitigate what I'm worried about as a critical response right off the bat if I start off with that, as opposed to letting someone bring critique to it? Am I just trying to head the paint off at the pass and assume that there's flaws in it by presenting it first? Is it a me thing or is it a woman thing? So self-deprecation is I don't know, that's been my professional theme of the last month or so, I think. I wanted to close with a question to you, which has been asked kind of on messaging boards everywhere as kind of the subtext. Like, everybody recognizes that DEI initiatives, of which inclusion and equity are a big part of that, even if the E stands for environment. And it seems to be like the buzzword. Everybody wants to invest in companies that can show this. But you're often asked to show, what is the business case? Like there's this underlying subtext of, well, why should we even bother? Besides it being the right thing to do, what does it bring to the table? So I wanted to put it to you, Amanda. What do you think inclusion and explicit intentional inclusion of women and other underrepresented voices, traditionally underrepresented voices, what does that bring to InfoSec specifically?
I do not have to give my opinion on this, because there are endless statistics about how much more efficient, creative, more ingenuity that teams from any profession are when there are women, when there is more inclusion. I don't have to give my opinion. Statistically, there is higher return on investment. Companies make more money. Companies save more money. Companies are more agile in that they're able to pivot faster in the market and identify market trends more quickly. Now, this stuff that I would encourage everyone to just look up. There's so much information out there that I don't even, it's not opinion. This is statistically the case, right? There's so much out there. This is not just because women have all of this stuff. It's because together in an inclusive environment, we all have strengths that can be brought to the table, and that makes a difference. Women have strengths, they have characteristics, they have ways of looking at things, perspective, they have things to bring to a team, they have things to bring to leadership that a business needs, a group needs, a team needs to make things as effective, as possible. So, yeah, I like this question because it's a really easy answer. What benefit is there to having women there? And really, the question is, when is there not? There is absolutely absolutely limitless reasons that it's a benefit. That, and we have a great sense of humor, in my opinion.
Yes, I mean, yeah. I mean, you and I definitely do. We'll if we can get Daniel to crack a smile, if we can get him to actually laugh on recording next time, you guys should really hear our pre-recording sessions. They're pretty. But we'll bring our baller sense of humor. And with that, then, we'll close. Thank you, Amanda, so much for taking the time to talk with us about this. I've been really excited for this one.
No, I appreciate you having me. I mean, knock. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks again, Ashley.
No, of course. And thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. And if you guys have, we'd love to hear about your experience, particularly working with women and other underrepresented voices in cybersecurity. And if you'd like, we'd love to hear about it. Please join the conversation online. You can follow us at Go Ivanti. That's Go IVANTI. Check the show notes on your podcasting platform of choice for all of the resources that we have, including, I think, a blog that you wrote explicitly for this for October 2022 Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So please do take the moment to check that out. And if you found today's conversation remotely interesting, entertaining, insightful, even a little bit, please share it with your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. The more times you share this, the more the algorithm loves us and the more we can talk to other InfoSec folks like yourself. So with that, we're signing off. Stay safe and we'll talk soon.